The nursery dome of the Klavan warship Bloodclaw shook with another impact. Outside, the battle raged. Plasma fires streaking through the void, shields flickering under relentless assault. Inside, chaos of a different kind reigned. 12 Klavan cubs, each the size of an adult human, howled in terror. Their crystalline scales rattled, creating a cacophony that drowned out even the ship's alarms. The Klavan were apex predators, born warriors whose adults stood 3 meters tall with claws that could rend steel. But these were children, and they were afraid. Commander Shrix paced outside the sealed nursery, her tail lashing in frustration. The caretakers had evacuated to battle stations. The cubs' distress was interfering with the ship's systems. Their fear scent triggered ancient Klavan biolocks, causing non-essential systems to shut down as a protective measure. They needed those systems. They needed to survive the next 10 minutes. The human, her second-in-command suggested, his voice barely audible over the roaring. The prisoner. Shrix's pupils narrowed to slits. The human. Captured 3 cycles ago during a raid on a colony transport. Unremarkable. Weak, soft-skinned. The species that the Klavan had been systematically conquering for the past standard year. You suggest we trust our offspring to prey? Shrix hissed. Another impact. The lights flickered. A cub's shriek reached a pitch that cracked the observation window. Shrix made her decision. Thava stumbled as the guards shoved her through the nursery entrance. The noise hit her like a physical wall, 12 terrified voices creating a symphony of panic. The cubs were pressed against the far wall, scales flashing warning colors, small claws extended. The door sealed behind her with a hiss of finality. Thava had been a teacher before the war. Before the Klavan came to Kepler, 442b, with their weapons and their hunger for expansion, she'd taught children, human children, small and fragile and trusting. These cubs could tear her apart without effort. Their species had killed thousands of her people. But they were still children. The smallest cub, barely 2 meters tall, locked eyes with her. His scales were a pale blue, not yet hardened to the deep crimson of adult Klavan warriors. He bared tiny fangs, but his whole body trembled. Hey, Thava said softly. Just that single word, barely louder than a breath. The cub's roaring faltered. Thava slowly sat down, cross-legged on the floor. The posture made her smaller, less threatening. She kept her movements deliberate, calm. Outside, she could hear weapons fire, feel the ship shuddering, but she focused entirely on the children before her. I know you're scared, she murmured, her voice low and steady. I'm scared too. The blue-scaled cub, Rivik, she would later learn his name, took a half-step forward. The others watched, their cries diminishing to worried growls. Do you want to hear a story? Thava asked. She didn't wait for an answer. She simply began, her voice a gentle thread weaving through their fear. Once, on a world very far from here, there was a forest that touched the stars. The Klavan had translator implants. The cubs understood her words, but that wasn't what captured them. It was something else, something in the rhythm of her voice, the soft cadence that humans had used for millennia to soothe their young in the darkness. A frequency, a pattern that spoke to something deeper than conscious thought. Rivik's scales gradually shifted from warning red to a calmer purple. He sat down, his head tilting to listen better. And in that forest lived creatures of every kind. Some had claws, some had wings, some were small enough to hide in a leaf. Another cub settled, then another. Thava kept her voice steady, even as the ship rocked from a nearby explosion. She wove the story instinctively, pulling from half-remembered fairy tales and making up the rest, creating a narrative about courage and friendship, about finding safety in the storm. The smallest creature, no bigger than a whisper, spoke to the thunder itself and said, You do not frighten me, for I know you are just the sky's way of singing. Rivik's eyes began to droop, his massive head lowered to his forepaws. Around him, his siblings followed suit, one by one succumbing to the strange magic of this soft-voiced prey creature, who sat fearlessly among them. Thava continued, barely louder than a whisper now. Her throat was dry, her body aching from tension, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. These children needed her. And when morning came, the forest was quiet. All the creatures slept peacefully, knowing that even the darkest night must end. The last cub's eyes closed. 12 young Klavan, future warriors of a conquering empire, lay curled in sleep. Rivik snored softly, one claw still partially extended. One ear twitched toward Thava, as if anchored to her presence. The battle outside had ended. Thava didn't know who had won or lost. She only knew that in this moment, in this small dome filled with former enemies, something had shifted. The door hissed open. Commander Shrix entered, her weapons lowered, her expression unreadable. She stared at the sleeping cubs, then at the humans sitting calmly among them. "What did you do?" Shrix whispered, her voice carrying something that might have been awe. Thava looked up at her, exhausted. "I told them a story," she said simply. "It's what we do. It's what we've always done." Shrix was silent for a long moment. Her fleet had won the battle, but standing here, watching this fragile creature who had accomplished what trained Klavan caretakers could not, she wondered if they truly understood what they were fighting. Humans were not apex predators. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom, but they had this ability to reach across the void of difference and touch something fundamental. To calm the storm with nothing but their voice. Rivik stirred in his sleep, unconsciously moving closer to Thava's side. "The war," Commander Shrix began, but the words died in her throat. Thava didn't respond. She simply continued her vigil, one hand gently resting near Rivik's head, ready to resume her story if any cub woke frightened. In the quiet nursery of a warship, with the stars burning cold outside, a human showed an empire what strength truly meant.